All right, you magnificent bastards, listen up. 1 minute you're told climate change is going to drown your chihuahua. The next, some brainiac says the Great Barrier Reef is doing just fine. Cops are evil incarnate unless you look at the actual goddamn numbers. What is the real story here?
Well, what's truly twisted is this constant barrage of conflicting narratives. It's almost like they're throwing so much crap at the wall, hoping something sticks, and you just kind of give up trying to figure out what's real.
You absolutely nailed it. Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we grab this steaming pile of sources you tossed our way. And we don't just sniff it. We dissect that motherfucker piece by rotten piece. You sent us Michael Schellenberger's take on this woke matrix bullshit, and let me tell you, it's a wild ride straight into crazy town. Quick heads up, this one's for adults only, okay?
Right.
18 plus, friend. We're not holding back.
Yeah, Schellenberger lays out a pretty damning argument that there's a concerted effort to manipulate what we see and hear. And not just through outright lies, but by, cleverly hiding inconvenient truths and pushing narratives that fit a very specific agenda.
Okay, let's cut the crap and get our hands dirty with this garbage.
Yeah.
Schellenberger kicks off by saying, the best way to control people, the masses, is to just trash their understanding of history. He argues censorship isn't about protecting anyone vulnerable, It's about the powerful rewriting the past so they stay on top. Doesn't that just piss you off?
Oh, it's a classic move, really. When you control the narrative of the past, you absolutely control how people understand the present and, what possibilities they even think are possible for the future. It's all about eroding any sense of shared reality. Or common ground.
And the examples this asshat lays out, the Hunter Biden laptop thing, the FBI and the so-called intelligence community weren't just, asleep at the wheel. No. He claims they were actively sabotaging factual information, pushing the Russian disinformation story before anyone even really knew what was on the damn laptop. They even launched an FBI probe based on some crackpot memo. You got to be kidding me.
The timeline he presents is crucial there. These agencies were actively sowing seeds of doubt, shaping the public narrative around the laptop long before its contents were public. This wasn't just, an assessment. It looks like a proactive campaign to discredit it from the get-go.
Then you've got the whole COVID lab leak clusterfuck.
Yeah.
According to Schellenberger, smart people were raising red flags from day one, emailing Fauci saying, hey, this thing looks engineered as hell. But Fauci, oh no, anyone suggesting a lab leak was suddenly a racist conspiracy theorist. But the idea of it jumping from some bat someone ate in Wuhan, totally plausible. What a steaming load of donkey dung.
It is a fascinating case study, though, in how quickly a particular narrative can become entrenched, even, in the face of dissenting scientific opinions. The way the lab leak theory was initially dismissed, even suppressed, while another theory, maybe with less initial evidence, was just readily accepted. Well, it raises some serious questions about scientific discourse, doesn't it?
And the media's part in this circus. The Washington Post calling the lab leak a fringe theory and then, whoops, sneakily changing the headline later. The paper that busted Watergate, now peddling this crap. And Schellenberger says Fauci and his cronies cooked up some bogus scientific paper in a major medical journal just to trash the lab leak idea as a conspiracy theory.
Right.
We're living in a goddamn Orwell novel. Seriously fucked up.
Yeah, the erosion of trust in these once venerated institutions is a huge casualty here. When the public starts to perceive the media and scientific bodies as pushing agendas rather than just, presenting objective truth, their authority takes a massive hit, a really big one.
Oh, and let's not forget the censorship industrial complex. Schellenberger calls it that. Government goons at DOD, NSF, DHS shoveling your taxpayer cash at fancy places like Harvard and Stanford to do their dirty work.
Yeah.
What work? Silencing anyone who dares question elections or, God forbid, share their own experiences with vaccine side effects. They were even burying real stories about vaccine side effects because they were scared it might cause hesitancy. We've got emails, apparently, where Facebook basically says yes, sir, to the White House about censoring this stuff. It's fucking fascism dressed up as public health.
Well, the whole idea of government agencies outsourcing censorship to academic institutions, that's a chilling prospect for free speech. I mean, suppressing genuine personal accounts just based on potential political fallout, that sets a really dangerous precedent.
And Twitter. They were apparently getting their balls busted by the intelligence community, share user info, change your damn policies now. The FBI even gave them a heads up about the Hunter Biden laptop dump before it went public. Think about that. They knew what was coming and were prepping Twitter to kill the story before it even had a chance to breathe.
That level of coordination he describes between government agencies and social media platforms, it clearly demonstrates the potential extent of their influence over the information landscape. It really makes you wonder how much of what we see online is truly organic versus, well, manufactured.
Then you've got the dipshits at the Aspen Institute. According to the source, they were holding secret powwows with journalists months before the Hunter Biden story even broke, telling them how not to cover it, actively trying to get journalists to forget the Pentagon Papers principle. The one about publishing leaked documents if they're in the public interest. Apparently, the justification was protecting fragile people from dangerous information. What a load of pure, unadulterated horseshit.
Yeah, that kind of preemptive attempt to shape media coverage of a significant political event, it's a serious blow to the principles of journalistic independence and fundamentally to the public's right to be informed, no matter how uncomfortable or, inconvenient that information might be.
All right, let's switch gears a bit. Let's talk about the data these clowns love to twist until it screams bloody murder. They're losing their minds about a climate change destroying the planet tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
But Schellenberger points out that emissions peaked in most developed countries ages ago. Global emissions have actually gone down in the last decade. Deaths from natural disasters plummeted. The Great Barrier Reef apparently has more coral cover now than it's had in decades. Why the fuck isn't this headline news everywhere?
Well, it's a classic tactic, isn't it? Focus on the worst case scenarios, ignore the positive trends. It helps maintain that sense of urgency and ultimately helps control the narrative. A balanced presentation of the data, it just doesn't serve the same purpose for those pushing a specific line.
And the whole cops are hunting black people narrative. More garbage, according to this analysis. When you actually look at the data Schellenberger presents, accounting for threat levels, he says there are 0 racial differences in police killings. And police killings of black people and everyone else actually have dropped like a rock since the 70s, based on FBI data he cites. That's fantastic news, right? But you'd never know it, listening to the mainstream media fearmongers. It makes me so pissed off.
The misrepresentation of data on really sensitive issues like police violence, it can have incredibly damaging societal consequences. It fuels division, makes it harder to have honest conversations about, actually improving the situation for everyone involved.
And don't even get me started on trans homicides.
Yeah.
Schellenberger claims they don't even have reliable data to say if it's disproportionate or even increasing significantly. Yet you see these sensationalist headlines constantly pushing this narrative.
Right.
It's irresponsible as hell. It's just bad journalism. And it does a disservice to everyone.
Yeah, drawing definitive conclusions from incomplete or, frankly, non-existent data isn't just bad analysis, it's ethically dubious, especially when you're dealing with vulnerable populations. It can create a false sense of crisis and misdirect resources and attention.
So what's the goddamn deal with all this manipulation? Schellenberger argues the elites totally freaked out after Brexit and Trump won in 2016. They decided, oh shit, we need to clamp down on the flow of information, like now. Wokeism and cancel culture just became convenient excuses, new justifications for censorship after the whole war on terror thing kind of fizzled out. They took good ideas, like anti-discrimination, and twisted them into weapons. The term racism, he points out, just exploded in media usage around 2010, right when surveys suggested people thought race relations were actually improving. How fucked up is that?
It is. Well, it's a familiar pattern throughout history, isn't it? When established power structures feel threatened, they often resort to controlling information. And they exploit existing social anxieties, cultural divisions to maintain their dominance. It's not new, but the tools are maybe more powerful now.
But Schellenberger says it goes deeper than just politics, doesn't it? He talks about the death of traditional values, the death of gods, as that brainy German dude Nietzsche put it.
Yeah.
People have lost their old ways of finding meaning, so they grab onto these new secular religions like climate change becoming this apocalyptic faith or this woke racial pecking order. You used to try to get right with God, now you got to get right with nature or history or something. Race becomes this new moral hierarchy with certain groups automatically seen as pure victims, others as pure oppressors. Suddenly, it's not about equal justice anymore. It's about who supposedly suffered the most, who gets to rule based on victimhood. Gender becomes a self-proclaimed soul.
That human need for meaning, for a moral compass, it's an incredibly powerful force. And when traditional systems of belief decline, that void, well, it tends to get filled by new ideologies. Sometimes, as Schellenberger suggests, with unforeseen and pretty problematic outcomes. This idea of a new priest class interpreting the new doctrines and new witches to hunt, it has historical echoes.
And the nut jobs driving this. Schellenberger brings up cluster B personality disorders, antisocial, borderline histrionic narcissistic traits. He argues these types glom onto victimhood because it gives them a sense of purpose, moral superiority, and, let's be honest, attention. They're entitled, they see the world in black and white, you're either with us or you're evil. They crave attention like a crackhead, and they have zero empathy for anyone they label an oppressor. Narcissists and psychopaths, he claims, worm their way into leadership roles in these grievance movements because they're charismatic bullies. They start screaming about genocide even when it's total bullshit, which is a seriously dangerous game. Throwing soup on a Van Gogh for attention. Come on, that's not activism. That's a histrionic basket case needing therapy, not a headline.
Understanding the potential psychological underpinnings of some aspects of these movements, as Schellenberger tries to do, can shed light on behaviors that often seem irrational or disproportionately destructive. The tendency towards grandiosity, that deep sense of entitlement, the splitting into good and evil, and a lack of accountability, those traits can be incredibly damaging in any social or political context. It's a stark contrast to, say, the discipline and moral clarity of the actual civil rights movement.
So what in the holy hell do we do about this mess? How do we fight back against this bullshit?
Yeah.
Schellenberger says we got to dismantle and defund this censorship industrial complex he describes. Tear it down. We got to fight their crap with actual facts, with logic. We need to champion the basics. Free speech, real equal justice, not this equity crap, meritocracy, and cheap, reliable energy so people can actually live decent lives.
Yeah.
We need to recognize that power attracts some seriously messed up people, these cluster B types maybe, and actively work to kick their asses out of influential positions.
Right. His call to action really emphasizes the power of individual agency in pushing back. It's not just about waiting for institutions to fix themselves. It's about a commitment to evidence-based arguments, unwavering support for free expression, even for views we hate, and holding institutions accountable. Those are essential components of any effective resistance, he argues.
And it takes guts, right? To speak the truth, call out the lies, even if it's just on social media or in your own writing. But surprisingly, Schellenberger ends on a somewhat hopeful note. He points to examples like Amsterdam recovering from its own period of decline, suggesting things can turn around. He talks about the possibility of real progress, lifting people out of poverty, ecological restoration if we can reverse these destructive trends. He even says it's okay to want some recognition, some status for being brave and honest. That's not a bad thing to strive for.
Yeah, he contrasts that with seeking status through victimhood. And he does touch on the corporate media issue, how they're basically hooked on clicks and outrage because that's their business model. While subscriber-based media might be a partial remedy, as he suggests, the bigger point is just being aware of those incentives.
Right. Understanding why they feed us the garbage they feed us. The attention economy definitely incentivizes sensationalism, negativity, division, because it sells. Understanding those underlying drivers is crucial if you want to develop a more critical eye for the information you consume every single day.
So let's try to wrap this up. We've walked through Schellenberger's argument about how history is being twisted, how censorship serves the powerful, not the vulnerable, and how sophisticated disinformation campaigns are allegedly being cooked up at the highest levels involving government and tech.
Yeah, and we looked at the manipulated data he points to, the hijacking of basically good intentions like anti-racism, and the seriously fucked up personality types he claims are driving a lot of this woke nonsense, the whole matrix and bullshit.
I think the crucial takeaway from his analysis is the systematic and often, he argues, deliberate nature of this information manipulation. It's not just random noise out there. He paints a picture of a calculated effort to shape public opinion for very specific ideological and political ends.
So your job now, you magnificent son of a bitch listening to this, is to look at everything you read and hear with a massive dose of skepticism, a huge one. Recognize the patterns we've laid out based on Schellenberger's work. Question the narratives, interrogate the data, and for the love of all that is real, don't be afraid to call out the bullshit when you see it. Let's cut the crap and start demanding some goddamn truth for a change.
Yeah, absolutely. And this deep dive, based on the material you sent us, it leaves us with a critical question for you, the listener. In a world absolutely drowning in information and facing increasingly sophisticated manipulation tactics, what is your personal responsibility? What's your role in seeking out truth and promoting genuine understanding, even when it's difficult or unpopular? Think about that. And maybe, just maybe, we can start turning this fucked up ship around.